Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give everyone else a minute or two to join before we kick off the webinar. Ben and Sophie, let me know when you are ready to go.
Thanks, Sydney. Let's just give another minute or two and let everyone else join. I know we had a lot of registrants to this, so we're not quite at capacity yet. Just give another minute or two.
Sounds good to me. All right, looks like we've just about leveled off in the waiting room, if that's all right, Ben.
Sure, let's go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Do you want to say anything to start, or okay?
Sure. Let me tee it up for everyone. So thanks everyone for joining this webinar today. My name is Ben Goldstein. I am the Senior Program Manager for Commercial Building Decarbonization here with the Colorado Energy Office. And today we have Sydney Abraham from the Clearly Energy team. Clearly Energy is CEO's vendor that manages and maintains the BEAM database, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, hopefully. And so today, Sydney's just going to walk through some of the different tools and functionality that is on the database and available for everyone to use. Just get through some, it'll be a little more high level, I think, some of the different tools. We do have another separate recording that Sydney's put together for, managing the inventory. So maybe we could link to that later, Sydney, and, to the extent that you don't get into all of that, can just let everyone know where to find that. So as we go through this, I'm going to stay mostly quiet, turn it over to Sydney. If you have questions that pop up at any time about BEAM and the tools specifically, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So with that, Sydney, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a second to tee that up here.
Sure. Sorry, Sydney, to interrupt. Just one thing I should mention off the top. We are recording this meeting. I believe the recording has started now. So, if you're not comfortable being recorded with your voice or your question, might want to exit the webinar now, and we will make this available on the BEAM database for people that aren't able to attend live. So just wanted to flag that. So if that's a concern for you, might want to log off now and, check out the webinar later.
Yes, that's a great flag. Thank you, Ben. And just confirming, Ben, that you can see my screen all right?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So I was saying to Sophie earlier, sometimes Teams gives me a little bit of a hard time with screen sharing. So if at any point you can't see what I'm seeing, then please just come off mute and let me know. But like Ben said, my name is Sydney. I'm with the Clearly Energy team, and I'm going to spend some time today walking through the BEAM platform, as well as some of the tools that are either linked through BEAM or available on BEAM that can help you at any point during your journey with complying with Building Performance Colorado. So whether that's viewing your data, making a payment, submitting inquiries, viewing some tools that are available just to help you out with your compliance journey, then BEAM can definitely be a great resource to help you out. Also, like like Ben said, apologies, we will leave plenty of time for Q&A. So please, as I'm talking, please feel free to just pop a question in the chat and we'll make sure to circle back to it as well. So I'm going to start by talking through the BEAM Building Owner Portal or Building Representative Portal. So, how to log into BEAM and claim your building. The first thing I'll note about that is that you do not at any point have to create a BEAM account and you do not need to log in. All of the things that you absolutely need to do in order to comply will either be through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is a separate tool where we've hosted separate trainings, or they'll be available completely publicly without any password protection. So these first steps that I'm going to show you are completely optional. We do recommend creating a Beam account for a few reasons. Some of the benefits of logging into Beam is just, primarily is that you'll be able to see exactly what the Building Performance Colorado team sees when they are reviewing and assessing your submission. This is the same platform that they use to view data. So if you have any questions about what they're seeing or maybe any of the feedback that they're sharing back with you, then being able to log into Beam is a really great resource just to be able to check out exactly what they're seeing. In a related vein, you'll be able to see any data flags or data questions that your building has. You'll be able to see really easily if you've made a payment or not, for that $100 annual fee. And there's a lot of resources within Beam as well, some data visualizations and analytics, things that can just help you in your energy efficiency journey with your building. But again, you do not have to. So if you do want to create a Beam account and you have not done so already, then you will come here to this login page, and I will put all these links in the chat as soon as I'm done speaking. But you'll come here, create an account. If you've already created an account, you'll just enter your email address and password that you've already set. But if you want to create a new account, then you'll come down here to this button that says Create My Account. And as you can see here, you'll be prompted to just add some very basic information. So an email address, your full name, and a password. And there are some requirements for that password, which you can see right here. I do want to make an important note about the email address that you use to log in here. So this email address is what we use to match you to your buildings. So if you're using an email address that is already on file with the state somehow, then when you log into Beam, you'll see those buildings. If you're using an email address that is not associated with those buildings, we might not be able to make that match, and that's okay. We can fix it. So if you are, benchmarking for the first time, or it's a new email address, or it's a new building, that's okay. We can help you fix it. But a really safe bet is to use the email address that you used for Energy Star Portfolio Manager to make a fee payment, or if you've asked any questions of the help desk in the past. Whatever email address is associated with any one of those actions will for sure be on file in Beam. If it's not one of those email addresses, again, that is okay, and we can help you fix that. But if you're logging in for the first time and you're not seeing your buildings, that is a really common reason why we're just not, having that email address that you're using on file with that building. So I'm going to cancel this out because I don't need to create my account right now. And look at that, it loaded for me just like that because I've already logged in a different tab. So once you've created your account, you'll just go back to that home page, add your email and password, and then you'll be able to log into Beam here. So when I first log in, this is the first thing that I'll see. You can see there's a few different options over here on the left, as well as down here on the bottom, I can either view my buildings or visit the help desk. I'm going to start by clicking right here on View My Buildings, which is actually the exact same button as this inventory right over here on the left side. Those two things will take you to the same place. I'm going to start here by clicking View My Buildings. And it'll open up this building inventory page. So like the name suggests, this is where I can see all of the buildings that the state has on file that match my email address. So in this case, I just have this one, sample test building on file here. But many of you may have, a portfolio of buildings that you manage, or you might be property managers with a lot of different buildings that are benchmarking. If that's the case, then you'll see all of your different buildings in, list format here. So each, individual row will be a unique building. I'm not going to spend too much time going through inventory navigation today. We have done a webinar on how the inventory works in the past. That goes a lot more, into detail into things like sorting and filtering the inventory and just how to read and interpret all this data. That is something else that I'll link in the chat, and I'll show you where to find the recording of that webinar. But for today's purposes, we have, a fair amount of other tools to get through. So I'm just going to stay pretty high level on the inventory for today. So just at a quick glance, right, I can see, again, my property name, my Colorado Building ID, and then I can scroll through and see just some, snapshot data that has been collected by the state. So things like, basic, consumption information, my property use type, electricity use, as well as my email address and, other contact information, and whether or not my fee has been paid. All of this information, again, will be available in this sort of grid view. You can also export this to Excel if you choose. So to do so, I would just select this property here using this check mark, and then go into this actions box and click export. Again, I really just have one building here, so it might not be so helpful for me, but if you are looking at lots and lots of buildings and just want to have them in a separate spot, that might be a little bit more useful for you. The other thing to highlight here is you can see these 4 little compressed rows. So I click on that, click on this arrow, then you can see this is where I have my data labels for this property. So like I said, this property is a test property, so it's not really concerning to me that I'm missing electricity consumption and natural gas and the fees not paid and all of that. But if you're, again, benchmarking for a large number of buildings, this can be a really helpful way to see what the state has or has not received in terms of data. So you can really easily go back and correct any outstanding errors or make a payment if you need to. I'm going to compress that. And again, more information can be found about the inventory in that older webinar, which we'll link to. But the last thing to note here is if I click on this little blue eye right here, then I will open up this property in what we call a property detail view. So this is the same building record, the same information, but just it's going to get a little bit more in depth. So if I scroll through here, you can see there's a lot more contact information potentially if we have it on file, and a lot more granular energy consumption information. So this should pretty closely match whatever we have from Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This particular property record is pretty sparse, which is, again, okay because it is a sample record. But this is where you'll be able to really just make sure that everything that you've entered from ESPM has come through to Beam in the manner that you expect it to. The other thing that is helpful here on this property detail view page is this communications tab right here. So if I click into this, there won't be anything here from this particular this particular property. But if I wanted to, this is where I can track any communication back and forth that I have had with the Building Performance Colorado program at any time in program history. So if I've ever received an email, sent in an inquiry, I can track the status of that here. And you'll also be able to open it up. So if you ever, can't find an email that was in your inbox somewhere, you'll be able to find it from right here on this page as well. Let's see, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So that's, navigating the inventory, claiming your building. Oh, actually, before I change gears, there is one other thing that I wanted to mention here on this inventory page, and that is just some really quick troubleshooting. So I don't need to load here right now. So oftentimes we hear, folks with questions about they've logged into the inventory and they can't see their buildings. I'm not sure why we're loading here, so I'm just going to refresh out this page. There were really 2 common reasons why you might come to this inventory page and not be able to see your building, and both of them have pretty simple, straightforward explanations. The first is what I had mentioned earlier on that login page about, making sure that you're using an email address that matches what we have on file. So whatever email address you use to log in needs to be on file with the state already. And if we don't make that match, you're not going to be able to find your building here in the inventory page. If that's, if you haven't made that match, that's totally okay. And we can help you set that up. So I'll show you a little bit more how to do that in just a few minutes. But the simple explanation is that you'll just go through the help desk. So you'll email into the program and ask them like, hey, here's my building ID. Can you please add my email address to this record? And as soon as they do so, you'll be able to see your building record here. The other common reason why we see people not able to find their buildings here is because there are different calendar year cycles that we can see here in the inventory. So I click here on this drop-down menu. You'll see I can toggle back and forth between, all of the 4 reporting seasons that this program has had so far. So if you're either not seeing your building at all, or you're seeing data that just does not match what you're expecting to see, the explanation for that is that you might be looking at the wrong reporting season. More likely, you're probably just not seeing data that matches, but if you have a new building or a building that was, not reporting in the earlier years for whatever reason, and that is okay, then that would be a good reason why. So those are the two things I would recommend before writing into the help desk if you are not sure why you're not seeing your building or if that data doesn't match. All right, so with that, now I'm going to change gears for real. So if I go back to this homepage here, so this is, again, the first thing that you'll see when you log in. I am now going to switch over to the help desk or knowledge base side of Beam. So there's, again, two different ways I can get there. You can either click right here on help desk or down here, visit the help desk, and those two things will take me to the same place. And that place is right here, which is the Beam knowledge base. And I'll also note that from here on out, everything that I show you is completely open to the public. You do not need to be logged into Beam. So if you choose not to go through that whole step of creating your account and opening the inventory, that is okay. And you'll still be able to see this just by entering this URL into your browser. And I'll put that URL in the chat as well. But this knowledge base here is, really the program's website. So just a really, really helpful resource for any kinds of questions that you might have about complying. So if I take a quick scroll through here, you can see that we have things like general program announcements, this roadmap to compliance page, which has a lot of information. I'll open this up really quick about just how you can go through the process of reporting your data to the state. So things like how to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, some common questions, how to find your building ID, and other information like that. So you can see it's really nicely laid out in, steps 1 through 5. So if you have any questions about just, things like how to benchmark, how to share your property, obtaining data, any of that can be found here at this knowledge base. Another helpful one is this webinar and office hours registration. So, if you have any questions and you want to attend future office hours, you can sign up there. This is also where you'll be able to find the library of previously recorded webinars, including that one about the inventory that I've mentioned. FAQs, it's pretty straightforward. Annual fee portal, we'll get to that in just a moment. And then information if you want to request either a waiver, an extension, or request to have your building removed from the list if you believe it should be a non-covered building entirely. And then a few other tools, which we'll get into in just a moment as well. So again, this is kind of a high-level flyby, but I would definitely recommend taking some time to look through this page if you have any questions just about how to report or how to comply. One of the other tools that I'll spend some time looking at right now is just if you click under announcements, you'll see there's a few different chapters here. I'm going to click into this last one, which is the Colorado Building ID Lookup. And this is a searchable list, so it's a static screenshot right now, but if I click on it, it'll open up a new page and you'll be able to find your Colorado Building ID. This is also really helpful if you want to be able to just see if your building is covered or not. But if at any point you don't remember your Colorado Building ID or you've misplaced it, then you can search on this list, just do, a Command F kind of search for your either property name or your building street address, and then you'll be able to see the associated Colorado Building ID with it. If at any point you have any questions or there's a question that you have that is not able to be answered by this knowledge base or you're having trouble locating your ID, then please just feel free to write into the help desk and they will be more than happy to assist you. But many, many common questions can be answered by the information here on this knowledge base. The other thing that you can do from here on this page is to submit some kind of ticket. So if I were to do that, then I would click right here on this little plus button by the new ticket, and then I'll see there's a fair amount of different ticket forms that I can submit. So this is where you'll be able to do things like, you can submit an extension request or a request for an annual waiver. You can, submit a general inquiry or, more specific, inquiries about, if you're a data center and want to request a specific kind of target or want to update your pathway selection for the 2026 targets. All of that can be done here through ticket submissions. So at different points in the process, you may be prompted by the program or by the help desk to go through and fill out one of these tickets. I'm going to use this Claim My Building and Update Building Contact form, as an example here. And this will allow you to update the contact information associated with your building. So earlier when I had said, if you're not seeing that connection made between your email address and the building record in the inventory, you can write into the help desk to have them fix it. this would be the best way to do so. So if you're not seeing your building in the inventory, you think the email address might not be on file, then you'll want to come through and fill out this form. So you'll enter your Colorado Building ID. And again, if you don't know it or can't find it, then you can look at that spreadsheet I showed you earlier. And then go through and add whatever other contact information you would like to add. So property manager, building owner, third-party benchmarker, and whatever other email addresses are helpful to you to be able to make that claim for that building. All of this should be pretty straightforward, right? You just fill out the information that's prompted here. And when you're done, click submit. If the help desk has any follow-up questions or needs any further information from you, they will certainly reach out to ask. But typically that should be sufficient in order to add your new email address to a building record. And all of the other ticket submissions are very similar, right? If you were to say, want to submit a waiver request, the deadline of that is coming up, so just as a heads up. But they'll prompt you to add some pretty specific information here, including the reason why your building may be eligible for a waiver or is non-covered or whatever other special circumstance you have going on. All right, let's see here. So I'm going to go back to the knowledge base for a moment. And I'm going to now switch gears slightly again and talk through some tools that can be helpful to you through the compliance journey. So we'll start with the fee portal because that's one that is definitely necessary for everybody looking to comply with the program. So as you know, many buildings are required to pay an annual fee of $100 per covered building. There are some exceptions to that. So if you think that your building does not need to pay that, $100, then this may not apply to you. If you have any questions about that, again, feel free to consult the knowledge base or write into the help desk just to confirm whether or not you need to make that payment. But if you do need to make the payment, which should be likely most buildings, then you can do so by clicking into this fee portal link here, and you can find the different portals for the different compliance years. Or you can just click right here, right under knowledge base on this left-hand menu where it says payment portal. So I click here on payment portal. It'll open up this portal in the new page. And I do also just want to highlight that there are different portals for each of the different reporting seasons. So probably the most likely scenario is at this point you're looking to make a payment for the 2025 reporting season, which is what we're in currently. However, if you have, for whatever reason, missed a payment for the past reporting seasons, which is completely fine, then you can go back and come into compliance with that payment for any of the 3 past reporting years. I'm going to open up the 2025 reporting season payment portal. And it should, again, be pretty straightforward here. It'll prompt you for all of the information that is required. So up top, just, the payer information. So, you or whoever is filling out the form will just add your name, your email address, your company, if you so choose. It'll also link you to this building ID lookup tool. So if you don't remember your ID off the top of your head, it'll be pretty easy to find. And then you'll come down here and add your building information. So this is where you'll add your ID. And this is really important. It's also highlighted red up here, is that you need to make a payment for a specific ID. And if you're not sure of that ID, it is really, really important to make sure that you are double checking either on that list or double checking with the help desk to make sure that you're paying for the right ID. Because if you make a mistake and pay for the wrong ID, this can't really be resolved until the end of the reporting season. We can also only accept one payment per ID. We don't want you paying for your ID multiple times. So just make sure that you have it right the first time. So what you'll do when you have your ID is you'll come here and enter it into this box. And I think my sample ID was C sample. So I'll search for it and it'll come up with some information here. So these grayed out fields will autofill with whatever is in the inventory that's associated with this building ID. So my address is blank right here just because there's not a ton of information for this fake building. But I have my building name here, which is test building, which is what I expect to see. So just before you proceed, just make sure that the information that you're seeing here looks right. If it doesn't, then you'll want to go back and double check. The other thing that you can do here is add buildings. You can pay for multiple buildings in a single transaction, so you don't have to come through multiple times. And the other thing to note here is that you may see some, just like text underneath this coming up if for whatever reason we can't process a payment for this particular ID. The most common reasons, or really I think the only reasons why you would not be able to process a payment for that ID would be, one, if it's already been paid for. So maybe somebody else in your organization already made that payment and you're good to go. The second reason would be if that building does not need to pay that $100 annual fee. Or the third reason is if that ID is already in someone else's cart. So if somebody else in your organization is already going through the process, you also cannot go through that process at the same time for that same ID. Once all of that is entered and processed, you'll come down here, add just, again, some contact information, and then you'll proceed to the checkout. I'm not going to go through the whole checkout process right now because it'll just be a pretty standard, payment platform. I also don't want to go through the whole process of making a payment right now because I don't have a real building to pay for, but that should be pretty straightforward. But again, if you run into any questions, we're always here to help. So that is the payment portal.
Hey, Sydney, I'm going to jump in really quick and answer some related questions.
Sure.
We'll get to all the questions at the end, but just want to touch on a few because they're related to the payment portal. Melissa, to your question about how early or when can we pay the $100 fee, you're able to pay the fee at any point during the reporting season. So March 1st through June 1st, 2025, anytime during that window, you'll be able to pay the fee for any of your buildings, including, as Sydney just went through, past reporting cycles where the payment was not made. So it has to be made during the reporting season, but that goes from March 1st through June 1st, 2025 this year. And then Bryce, to your question about is the reporting season due by June 1st or will that change based on the pending legislation that's currently being considered? So it's not changing for this year, regardless of what happens with the legislation. The reporting season for the 2025 reporting season will end on June 1st. However, that might change based on what's in the bill. So if people aren't aware, there's current legislation being considered by the state legislature pertaining to Building Performance Colorado that might impact and change a lot of the ways that this program works. We're not going to go through those specific changes now because that's not the focus of this webinar. But once we have more clarity on when that passes, if it passes, we'll be sure to let everyone know of all the changes and everything that you need to know. But none of those changes will impact the 2025 reporting season. So for reporting your benchmarking this year, paying the fees, everything related to that, just go based on what's currently in statute and in the technical guidance and Regulation 28, which is the rulemaking that established all the policies and procedures and requirements for this program. But yes, once we have a better idea about if the bill is going to pass and when it passes, we'll be sure to let everyone know about that. And yes, thank you, Bryce, for posting that in the chat. Like I said, we'll be sure to, when it passes, if it passes, let everyone know about all the changes, and we'll do a whole separate webinar and communications just for that. But yes, for this reporting season, June 1st, 2025 is the end date, and that's not going to change no matter what happens with the legislation.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Anything else that we want to touch on before I go through the last two tools?
No, we're good to move on. We have some other questions, but we can go back to them at the end.
Okay, sounds good. My last two topics will be a little bit shorter, so then we'll open it up for Q&A in just a few minutes. All right, so back to the knowledge base. And so the last two things I want to highlight are tools that may be helpful to you as you look to comply with the program, but are certainly not necessary in any way. So to find those tools, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here, and I'll look at this chapter called Compliance Map and Pathway Selection Calculator. If I open this up, there are just really quick hyperlinks to both of these tools. I already have them open, but you can get to them just by clicking on one of these two articles here. So I'll start with the Building Performance Colorado map. If you're logged in as a building owner, you'll also be able to get to this just by clicking on this map tab right over here. But this is, like all these other tools, you do not need to be logged in to see this. So this is our data disclosure map, if you will. So you can see here, if I scroll down, I can see all these different points represent different buildings. And this is how the state presents on the data that has been collected by the benchmarking program thus far. So Similarly to the inventory, it works in calendar year cycles, so I can toggle between all the different years of benchmarking data that we have so far. And this is just a really easy way to see, similarly to that building ID lookup tool, whether your building is covered. You can take a look at the ID, or rather the information that's been associated with that ID in the past. And you can take a look, if you so choose, at similar buildings and just compare your building to others. So you'll see here, each of these little clusters represents some buildings. And if you find a point that just says the number 1 on it, then you can click on it and open up some information for that particular building. You'll also see here in some of the cities or more densely populated areas, there'll be quite a few buildings. So you may need to click in a little bit closer to actually be able to open up an individual building record. I can also search for a building. So if I choose not to, click all the way down to my building point, or if I'm not totally sure where it is, then you can search for an address here. So I will search for my sample address, which is 123 Test Street. And if I click on that, it'll just zoom all the way in, and I'll be able to see this little pop-up with information like my ID and my address, floor area, and just some other basic information that's been collected by the program. So this is also, like I said, a really helpful way to be able to find your building ID if you don't know it, or just take a look and see, make sure that all the information matches what you expect to see based on what you've benchmarked. We can also filter this map, so I can take a look and, maybe I want to see only the buildings that are in compliance so far, or have been approved for a waiver. I can also toggle by some of these other filters here, so I can expand or condense this data range depending on a few other factors. So again, not necessary by any means, but definitely a helpful tool for you to come take a look and just make sure that all of the information that you see here is what you expect. And finally, the last tool that I'll spend some time with today is the Pathway Selection Calculator. So if I click into this, you'll be able to click to view the tool by clicking here. So this tool is a little bit more, so moving away from benchmarking and moving a little bit more towards the building performance targets that will go into effect in 2026. So as you may know, there are different ways that you can comply with the building performance targets. You'll be able to choose one of 4 different pathways, depending on the kind of building that you have. And so, that selection is due by, I believe, July 1st of 2025, and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong on that date. We'll put it in the chat. But this tool can help you, preliminarily select that pathway that you choose to use by taking a look at what your different baselines, what your different targets would be based on your baseline in each of the different 4 scenarios. So what you'll do is you'll select your property type, or your primary property type, as defined by Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So I'll choose, I think I said I was multifamily housing. So I'll go down and find multifamily housing. And then you'll enter your estimated baseline, either energy use intensity or your greenhouse gas use intensity, or ideally both. And what we mean by baseline is just your first year of benchmarking data, which should be 2021. If you're a new building that didn't exist in 2021, it may be later than that, but for most of you, it will be 2021 data. And all of this can be derived from your inventory. So if you don't know it off the top of your head, you can go into the Beam inventory and find it, or you should be able to go back into Energy Star Portfolio Manager and find it there as well. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. If you want to just play around with this calculator and see, like, let's just estimate, right? Like maybe my estimated baseline EUI is 100 and my estimated baseline greenhouse gas intensity is 10. Then with those inputs, as well as my property type, I'll be able to see what my potential pathway would be, or rather my potential target would be under the 4 different pathways in both 2026 and 2030. So taking a look at these numbers, I can compare them and make the decision of which pathway I want to take, depending on what is best for my organization and my building. So once you have made a decision about which pathway you would like to use, we would recommend that you go ahead and fill out this form, which is linked right here. You can also find it under new ticket. It's 2026 target pathway selection, and that will confirm to the state which pathway you would like to take. So with that, that is all of the tools that I have to highlight for today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll open it up for Q&A. And just before we do, I want to make one quick note that we will be sharing a link in the chat. Well, first of all, to all of the tools that I had mentioned today, as well as a post-webinar survey, just to take a look at if there's any other questions or topics that you would like to see addressed in either this webinar or future webinars. All right, so with that, I will open it up to questions.